Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott MacKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
Hello, industrial professional. Thank you very much for joining Industrial Talk, the #1 industrial-related podcast in the universe that celebrates you. I'm pointing right at you in the camera because you're bold, brave, you dare greatly, you're changing lives. You are changing lives, and therefore changing the world for a better. It's simple math. It makes complete sense. This is the start of our innovation series. We're featuring John Turner. He's the CEO of Gafcon Digital, and he is the leading voice, one of the leading voices in the world of digital twin. And just take note, there's slides. So if you want to look at it on the video, just go out to Industrial Talk, the YouTube channel, find out the slides. It's all there. Make it happen. It's chock full of great information. Let's get cracking. Yeah. I've interviewed him before, and he didn't disappoint then. He knows a lot. He knows a heck of a lot. And it's exciting to see specifically how they're deploying digital twin into data centers and trying to standardize the construction of many of these data centers, because they're out there. They're everywhere. You might not even know that they exist, but they are out there, and it is exciting to see what they're doing and how they're building these data centers, which are very important, very, very important going forward. Yeah, you know that. Well, who am I preaching to? All right, just a sort of a note of business. If you have a podcast, you're saying, hey, I need more traction on that podcast, come talk to me. Get it out on Industrial Talk. We have a great community of followers that would be very happy to find out more information, because we're really into that education component. We're really into that collaboration, and as well as innovation. And specifically in the world of industry, it's just changing so dramatically. So again, I offer that out to you. If you have a podcast, you want greater traction, you want greater attention, stick it out on Industrial Talk. If you're thinking to yourself, how can podcasts help me in bringing in other opportunities, fill in that funnel, you need to be talking to me too as well. I'll help you get that started. I'll help you prop it up and help you really define that strategy around why podcasting is important to your digital efforts, the bottom line. All right. One last thing, if you have a desire to be on the podcast saying, I have a technology that I want to put out on Industrial Talk, just go out to Industrial Talk. Reach out to me and say, Scott, I've got this technology. It's sort of that AppSumo approach. We highlight it, we elevate it, we talk about the benefits of it, because when you get right down to it, we're trying to solve problems. Whatever the problem is, define that problem, solve that problem, help everybody succeed. That's what Industrial Talk is about. It is a collection of individuals that you can collaborate with. They're an open book. It's all out there. You want to talk to somebody on digital twin, John Turner want to have a conversation with you. He's an open book. And there are many, many professionals out there on Industrial Talk. Let's get cracking with the conversation, the webcast. I call it a webcast. It's a webinar-ish. Tomato, potato. It's the same thing. I just like webcast, the term webcast. John Turner, he's in the hot seat. And again, you want to see the handouts. You want to see what's being, talked about in a visual form. Go out to Industrial Talk's YouTube channel and watch it there. So let's get cracking. Here's John. John, welcome to Industrial Talk. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thanks very much for the invitation, Scott.
Oh, yeah, we were, listeners, we were working through the technology, and we prevailed. We beat technology, and now it's working for our benefit. All right. John, before we get into the topic of BIM, give us a little background on you and your company and what makes you so fantastic.
Well, the fantastic might be a stretch, but what makes us different So, Scott, my company, Gafcon Digital, focuses on helping owners develop what we call a digital building lifecycle. There is so much inefficiency within our current design, construction, operational side because of the silos that are really the way the industry has evolved, but also the way the legal system enforces that. And what we want to do is to try and break apart those silos and provide a lot more efficiency, particularly for our main client base, which we defined as serial builder, owner operators. And that gives us a big focus on the hyperscalers, the people building a lot of data centers at the moment, but also on retail and on life science, where they're building essentially the same things over and over again. And if we can try and avoid the construction focus, where everything is built as a single entity, and get more with a manufacturing perspective, then we can benefit from building the same thing over and over again, but more efficiently.
See, I didn't realize you're absolutely right. If I'm buying a McDonald's, I know McDonald's has a certain layout, and there's a logic to it, and they've optimized their design and their building process. Is that an accurate way of looking at that?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah. The analogy I sometimes give is that Ford wouldn't let the people who are assembling F-150s assemble every vehicle in a different way. They have a playbook. They have the parts arriving on the production line in a set manner. They're applying lean techniques. We don't do that within our standardized world of construction.
That is so interesting. Now that you bring that to my attention, I can see that, and it's especially in the world where we're building these data centers. You'd think that there could be some sort of way of standardizing these construction efforts. Let's put it that way. So that just brings us into the whole topic of how do we begin making that more efficient? How do we begin standardizing this process? So I'm going to share a little presentation that you put together. Take us through why BIM and all that good stuff.
Okay. So first of all, if we're going to standardize things, we have to digitize. And our world of construction is probably one of the least digitized industries. In fact, I think MacKenzie said second only to agriculture, and even they have self-driving tractors. So first of all, we have to have that foundational data model. And BIM, which is building information model, but also building information modeling and building information management, gives us that ability to set up that foundational data model, which can then be leveraged between 2D, 3D, cost, schedule, embodied carbon, properties, and documents. But we have to intercept the way BIM is currently being used by architects, which is predominantly to produce the 2D drawings for permitting, and GCs, who are predominantly using BIM to avoid clash issues in the field. From an owner's perspective, we want to use BIM as that foundational data model to tie everything together, not just for the construction process, but for the complete life cycle of the building.
Is this approach what we were talking about? I can see it being applied to new construction. Can it also be applied to existing structures?
Absolutely. Yes. So as soon as we start to think of the data we need in a digital environment, we can start to bring in reality capture. So in reality capture can be 360 cameras, it can be photogrammetry, it can be laser scanning or LiDAR. We can bring that in as a reference model into the design BIM, or rather than focusing on a BIM-centric world, we can focus on a data-centric world and bring everything into a real-time or gaming environment and start to integrate a lot of different perspectives. We've got the visual twin, we've got the digital twin, we've got BIM, we've got reality capture, all of which can be integrated in a single environment. And then the use cases can be shared amongst all of the actors or participants within the digital building lifecycle. without having to build solutions for the individual silos.
You touched on something that I need clarification. You have visual twin and digital twin. Tell us, what does that mean?
Yeah, so a visual twin is something, if you go to slide 10, we'll jump through the slides a little bit and
I'm going to scroll on through and go to slide 10.
Yeah.
Tell me when to stop.
So a couple more. There we go. So here is a visualization of a factory. And this is showing the factory floor. It's also showing the forklifts, which in this case are autonomous forklifts driving through the factory. If we just provide a visualization of this, it's a visual twin. But we take it one stage further. So we make sure that everything that is happening in the factory is then updated in real time, or near real time, so that we can, for example, see exactly where the forklifts are anywhere on that shop floor. We can also monitor the power requirements and what's happening with the power demands, the particulate count within the factory. So if the particulate count goes above a certain level, we can restrict access to humans in that area and turn on fans. So it becomes a way of controlling and monitoring the complete environment. So the difference is the visual twin is just the visual representation, but there is no updating of what's happening within that environment. A digital twin is then taking it to the next phase, which is integrating everything that's happening in that environment so that it can be controlled like it's a computer game.
So how do you begin taking all of this great technologies, as I scroll again, no big deal, going back to the slide, how do you begin impacting, back up, how do you begin taking an industry that is set in its ways? We build buildings this way. This is what we do. How do you begin shifting that efforts into a more efficient approach and digital twin the construction?
Scott, that's the foundational question. This has got very little to do with technology. It's all to do with organizational change management.
Yeah.
And the first question is, not everyone is going to be open to doing that. And that's one of the reasons why we focus on serial builders, because they have the greatest benefit from changing their process. They realize that in the terms of the hyperscalers, the data centers, they cannot scale through the existing process. There's just not enough people to do it. So they have to change the way that they are building their data centers. So rather than constructing them, we start to think about, well, why not assemble them? Why not apply manufacturing perspectives and start to get into this very different perspective? So slide 4, if we jump onto slide 4.
Sure.
You're starting to describe, so we're jumping around, we'll probably make a few.
No, it's not a problem. So it's all about the conversation. Go ahead.
So the evolution of the process is really in 3 steps. So first of all, existing process within our construction world is plan, design, construct, and operate. Very, very simple. And we normally find that the owners and their contractors are organized within these 4 main silos. So what we want to do is to get more into this manufacturing perspective. So we have to change the way planning is done. It's really planning and developing the process so that it can be applied many times. We're then going to go into design with a lot of simulation, because the key benefit of a digital twin is to predict how you're going to do something, how a building is going to perform in energy or in people use, and then monitor how it actually is performing, and then make changes the next time you go through the cycle. If you're building a one-off football stadium, it's probably not going to be advantageous. But if you're building 50 football stadiums, probably is advantageous. If you're building 100 data centers, it's certainly advantageous. If you're building 500 retail units, certainly advantageous. So then we're going to start to come out of design, and rather than the architect just handing over a set of drawings to a general contractor, we're going to make sure that design is focused on how you're going to manufacture, fabricate, deliver, and assemble these units on site so they can be put together very quickly. And rather than going into a conventional test and commissioning process, you can then start to use model-based commissioning. So you can actually start to automate a lot of the process. And then when you get into operate, maintain, you're getting into this closed loop process, getting all the data on how the people are using the building, how the building is performing. And you can go through a lot of what-if scenarios to then start to improve things. And that then leads into the final phase where we start to consider design for manufacturing and assembly. So rather than just design, we design in units. We design a kit of parts. So even in a standard office building, every building has restrooms. So why design each of those restrooms individually? Why not design them once and use them many times? And then you've got to change the way you go through the planning and development. You move around your Lego blocks, make them fit the site, make them fit the use case, and then these Lego blocks can be assembled from the design kit of parts. They can be fabricated, they can be brought to site in a particular order, and then the whole process becomes more like a manufacturing assembly line.
We've been talking about the data centers, and can you take a data center and build it to a certain level? Let's say 3-story, whatever. I have enough business to support a 3-story data center, but in 3 years, I'm going to have to add to it. Can you add to the design if it's a Lego type of approach where I can then scale it to accommodate the market at that time?
That's a very insightful question. So I basically say there are 3 assumptions that we should make about buildings. First of all, something is going to be done in that building. It's going to be an office building or manufacturing or distribution. The second assumption is that that process that's done inside of that building is going to change before the building life expires. So we've got to design buildings so they're more flexible in terms of what can be done inside them. But then thirdly, buildings are becoming much more intelligent. In fact, if you go on to the next slide, slide 5, start to talk about how there are 3 main focuses from an owner's perspective. So starting around about 2 o'clock, we've got the IT focus. So there's a lot of systems which are involved within the owner's life cycle. ERP, CRM, the HR systems, there's data integration. We know about data lakes, data warehouses, analytics. There's a lot of technology being applied. But the first phase in the use of that technology was really to start to integrate the IT systems with the people and processes. That's the systems integration, front office, back office type of things, where you can go to the internet now, you can see what stock is available, you can order that. But the third phase of the evolution, which is what we're just entering now, is now to start to integrate the building with the processes which are going on inside of that building, and hence we have to integrate with the IT systems so that we can completely eliminate these information silos and point solutions. We can get more predictability. We can start to better define how our organization is functioning. That allows us to go through and make better decisions, better predictability with the budgets from an owner perspective. So it boils down to 2 things. We can increase the predictability of a business operation, and we can mitigate risks to that business operation by integrating these 3 focuses of IT, people and process, and buildings.
And that gives that ability to be able to Well, it gives the asset a much more usable life, right? I mean, this is what always gets to me is these data centers. People don't even know they're data centers. They just look like buildings, and which is really fascinating to me. But they build them in such a way that meets today's markets, and you know that data centers are expanding dramatically, and there's going to be more reasons for them. And I just thought that. Now, back to where we were at. This is a cultural mindset. How do you begin changing that approach to building to include this sort of Venn diagram, digital twin systems? Yeah.
It's a transformational approach, and every transformation begins with a first step. So generally, we're focusing on the fact that we're going to need a lot of data in the operational environment. And the work we've done with insurance companies show that up to 60% of the data required to operate the building is lost within the design and construction process.
You're going to have to sort of clarify what is 60% of
60% of the data. So knowing what an asset is. So we define assets as things, as systems, and spaces. So when we go into building operation, a lot of the information has been collected or is needed from an asset-centric perspective. We want to know that we've got so many pumps or so many air handling units. We want to know manufacturing information, warranty information. We want to know how those systems are organized. So in a hospital environment, which of those mechanical systems are providing clean air to the operating theaters. And so a lot of that information is available within the construction phase, but project controls in construction has a big focus on cost, not a focus on the asset.
Oh, so 60% of that information doesn't exist after construction.
No, and because we're using, from an owner perspective, because we're using GC systems to collect that data, that information might not be transferred in the correct form into the owner systems.
GC, what does that mean?
General contractor and the trade.
It. Holy cow. And that comes from insurance, and they're saying that 60%. What? Okay, so 60% is gone. Continue with that thought process.
So what we focus on is making sure that that data can be collected in an organized perspective. So maybe if you bring up slide 6, this will give an idea of where we're coming from. So we want a data-centric approach. So in the bottom left-hand corner, we have the building information model. This is setting up the basic data structure because the data intensity within the BIM, it's a very granular data model. Every single BIM element can be associated with properties. It can be associated with a cost. It can be associated with documents. It can be associated with embodied carbon and also with the schedule. And so we're using the BIM as that central data model to start to bring together all of this information in a very holistic manner. And then as that project evolves from design through construction, we're looking at the handover from the AE, the architect and engineering team, to the general contractor and their trade contractors in a form that allows us to track the associated data to each of those assets right the way through into operations. And that allows us to set up the digital twin, which is very beneficial to the owner.
Are we looking at something that's, you've got your standard process of how I'm going to build a building. Got it. When I start to incorporate a data-centric approach, are you asking more from the general contract, or is this something that just happens, or am I impacting somebody's time, or do I just gather this information through the BIM and it just happens?
As long as you have this process designed at the start, there is no additional cost. In fact, using a BIM-centric approach, and maybe if you jump onto slide 8, we have what we call a 3Cs approach. So first of all, we have to teach the team involved to communicate, because architects and general contractors and owners don't speak the same language. An architect might call a pump something, a general contractor might call it something else, and the procurement might call it something different again. We're providing that basic data structure to allow them to communicate. Now, just because they all speak the same language doesn't mean they want to collaborate. So now we need to look at the processes, and these include the contracting processes, to get everyone working together in a more holistic manner. And that allows us then to produce data which we can use to correlate all of these activities and improve these activities. So it's a very simple approach in principle, very much more difficult to make happen in practice.
In practice. Yeah, I can only imagine. And but it might be difficult, but what's the benefits? There's got to be a reason why I would want to do this. Tell us the upside.
The key is predictability. It's knowing when your new facility is going to be available, at what cost. So big focus on predictability of safety, because if we can, best way we can improve safety is to remove people from the site, or to decrease the schedule, so that people are not on site where most of the accidents happen. So we're looking at predictability in safety, predictability in cost, schedule, and quality. So if this process is taken from an inefficient standard process, we've seen cost savings of 10 or 15% overall.
Significant.
On the construction. Now, that doesn't apply to every single project, because there's still a lot of efficiency in individual approaches, but a lot of clients will put together a contingency budget, which is 10 to 15%. Our aim is to completely eliminate the need for that contingency through predictability.
It also, through the life cycle of that asset, that building asset, if you establish the proper solutions up front, then it does continue to reap benefits throughout the life cycle. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And from an owner's perspective, 80 to 85% of the cost of the building are post-construction. They're in the life cycle aspects of it.
What does that mean?
So the operation of the building. So I'll give you an example of some work we did with a university. So it was an older building. They were going through and upgrading all their air conditioning systems, and they were going into summer classes. So we said, why don't you focus on upgrading the air conditioning systems on just one side of the building first, and then moving all your classes into the side of the north-facing side, which will be cooler in the summer, and then arrange your construction schedule so that your revamp is then focused on the hot side in the summer, where you've got less students. So if you think of just thinking outside of the box, you can start to apply things in different ways. One of the other examples was working, particularly around COVID. A lot of conference rooms were fairly large, maybe 12, 20, 40-person conference rooms. As we started to do what we're doing now and starting to use a lot of more web-based meeting, those conference rooms were not fully occupied, but they didn't necessarily know which conference rooms were not being occupied. So we started to use the carbon dioxide sensors, which were available, to focus on how many people were actually turning up to the room, and so that we could advise on how the conference rooms could be subdivided to make the use of the building very much more efficient.
Huh. See, it seems like a no-brainer. I mean, and what I hear, I can take existing assets, I can deploy a solution, what we're talking about, and begin reaping the benefits, or a greenfield type of arrangement from a construction perspective, and be able to establish a solid baseline so that the life cycle is the life cycle of that asset is more efficient. It seems like a no-brainer. Why? What are the roadblocks?
The roadblocks are largely organizational because most owners still focus on a planning team, a design team, a construction team, and an operations team. So most of our focus with our more enlightened owners is to understand what's going on in each of those silos and to start getting them working together. So go back to our 3Cs. We have to install data standards to teach them how to communicate. We have to then enable them to collaborate with that data, and then they can correlate the overall performance. So that's the slide. It comes down to those 3 steps. Very, very simple to explain, extremely difficult to make happen in practice.
But are you finding that there's a greater receptiveness to the what you're talking about? It's happening, whether you like it or not. It's happening. And I just think that if you want to be a competitive business, you need to consider all ways of being able to be more efficient. This just seems like a no-brainer.
It's definitely happening, and there are a certain of the technology-based companies which understand the value of digitization, the value of technology. They're very much open to the fact that, well, we're selling these solutions that work in the data centers. We should be eating our own dog food. Now, a lot of the retail companies are more focused on supply chain and distribution rather than just the stacking shelves with products. They are highly technical and they understand the value of technology. But if we can then start to link, for example, the refrigeration systems with the products which are being sold, that whole merchandising, we can start to make them more efficient by understanding how people are tracking through the stores, what they're buying, when they're buying it, when that product should be made available, whether it should be put on special offer. It's all down to the looking at this as a complete life cycle, not just in the silos of design, construction, operations.
Wow. It just seems bright. We're going to have to wrap it up here. But how do people get a hold of you, John? Let's say that they want to find out more about what Gafcon can do and have the conversation with you or your team. What's the best way to make that happen?
Probably just email me, jturner@gafcondigital.com.
Yeah. Because that's the way to go. Anything we left out as a result of our conversation, or did we cover your topic thoroughly?
I think we've covered the highlights. This is a topic that I could talk for 3 or 4 hours about because there's so much. We haven't got into one of the key aspects of energy use within buildings, because our buildings consume 41% of the energy in the US. So key aspect.
Hold on. Now you just dropped a truth bomb there. You're saying 41% of the energy that is consumed in the United States come from buildings.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's the fact that a lot of energy goes into making steel and concrete and glass. A lot of energy is used in keeping the buildings cool or heating them. So there's 41%. It's staggering.
That's another conversation. That's huge.
I'll send you a paper that we wrote as part of the Digital Twin Consortium, which will introduce that subject. That in itself is a subject which can be addressed through digital twins, through prediction of how a building is going to perform, and then monitoring how it will perform.
See, I heard a staggering stat on, because of generative AI, because of that solution, the demand for power grows 3 times the existing capacity because of generative AI.
Yeah, that's
And
AI data centers use a huge amount of energy.
yes, and
But
anywhere that you can slice away or begin to whittle down that 41%, as it only helps. It helps the utilities dramatically.
absolutely, and that's why a lot of the AI data centers are now being sited rather than locally, because they're not so impacted with latency by having to be in the locality. You can now build very large AI data centers close to hydroelectric or solar or nuclear power.
Wow. Didn't know that. All I know, I was in Reston and they had a lot of data centers there.
A lot of data centers, yeah. In fact, they're running out of power locally.
Yeah, see? And I didn't know it. And they just look like buildings. They look like, big buildings and 5 people run it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, this was a great conversation, John. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for the invitation, Scott. I've enjoyed speaking with you.
Awesome stuff. Okay, we're going to have all the contact information for John out on Industrial Talk, absolutely. And we're going to have send us that document. We'll have that on Industrial Talk as well as. Do you have any issues with us posting this presentation?
No, none at all.
Yeah, there you go, man. All right. Thank you, John. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott. Bye.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
John Turner, Gafcon Digital is the company. And again, here at Industrial Talk, we're all about that education, collaboration, and of course, innovation. But the biggest part and the best part about it is that these individuals that you can reach out on Industrial Talk, have a conversation, and continue that education journey. If you're in the world of industry, this is a must. It is changing so rapidly, so fast, that you have to maintain that education and being able to talk to individuals that are leading that way. John Turner is definitely it. Digital twin is going to impact your life. Figure it out. Be a part of your discussion and part of your education. Right there, reach out to John. You will not be disappointed. All right. Come to Industrial Talk. You have a podcast, you want to be on the podcast, you have technology, put it out on Industrial Talk. Be bold, be brave, dare greatly. Hang out with John, change the world. We're going to have another great conversation shortly, so stay tuned.